Seguimos.
Okay, let's continue with today's program, the Sobremesa session. We don't interrupt for coffee break, and we welcome our two speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay, so here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Clara Reyes from St. Martin.
My name is Suzanne Burke from Trinidad and Tobago.
So our Sobremesa actually began almost 8 months ago.
Yes, I'm being reminded.
Well, I met Miss Burke in Barbados at Caribe Festa. So when I was told that I would be collaborating with her in this conversation, I didn't know at the time who she was. So when I saw her, I said, I do know you. We met. We met in Caribe Festa.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So the thing was, I came here with a mission, and the mission was the conversation has been going on quite a few about the other islands who have been, on the receiving end of nature's most amazing and powerful hurricane situation, this magnificent display of the magnitude and the grandness of what nature can do. Of course, we got whooped in the meantime, and some of us are still reeling from the level of nature's involvement in our lives. So what is very interesting that you should know, the last time I went to Caribe Festa in 1995, I left Trinidad, and then that was August something, and then 5 days later, we got hit by Hurricane Louise.
Oh my gosh.
And now again, I went to Caribe Festa in Barbados, and on the same date.
Then Trinidad, yeah.
And so now I'm almost scared to have this Caribe Festa dialogue, because coming out of the experience of the hurricane, immediately my country was involved in trying to use the arts as a vehicle for healing. Mm-hmm. So there were several programs set up, and one of them being the foundation I worked with, and it was called Art Heals. And then immediately following that, the minister set up a program called the Minister Resilience Plan. Mm-hmm. And it dealt with the psychosocial well-being, mm-hmm. and of which the arts and artist organizations were brought in to work with the community to help with the healing process. However, in the meantime, we've been, living in this place of called recovery, and it's not being defined, and we're not moving forward. So I thought, okay, St. Martin being what it is, in that we don't have a very clear infrastructure about arts and culture, and what we know as arts and culture is, MTV, Temple, BET, that whole industry. And I was saying, okay, it would be great if I could, in collaborative with the arts community, bring something a la Caribe Festa to St. Martin to act as an agent of healing. But then since I got here, I've been hearing some wonderful stories of Caribe Festa, so here's where you come in. And of course, I find out that you are the next director of Caribe Festa. I'm like, yes, the stars are lining up. This is where I'm supposed to be. Susan is going to direct me to this journey. So I switched the mic over to you so you can tell me your journey about Caribe Festa.
Okay, thanks very much, Clara. And it's such a pleasure for me to be here. The arts, we in the section of the university where I live, we do a lot of research on what we call trauma studies. And in the Caribbean, we are no strangers to trauma. And of course, coming from Trinidad and Tobago, we say that God is a Trinidadian. Yes, we say this all the time. In fact, we have dodged so many hurricanes in the past 20 years that the last one that was supposed to come last year, the hurricane, the night that we were supposed to be having it, went between Trinidad and Tobago. And immediately on social media, people were posting our national ID cards, and on the picture was Jesus, and at the back, Trinidadian, right? So we respond to arts and so on, not out of a sense of trauma or healing, but just being. And in a sense, that works for us sometimes, and it works against us in other times. So being involved in Caribe Festa, which is due in 2019 in Trinidad, I do that with much trepidation, because as Anne Lee and those of you who have ever gone to a Caribe Festa know, it can easily go off the rails. Yeah? And so I was sitting in the audience thinking about this notion of institutionalism and thinking about what does an institution mean? Carrie Festa has become an institution, a Caribbean institution. It was, for those of you who may not be aware of the history, developed by Guyanese President Forbes Burnham in 1972 as a platform to bring artists, intellectuals, activists together to have conversations, very much in the same way that we're having this conversation today. And so the institution is really, when I looked up the Latin origin of the word, it says an institution is a disposition. It's a disposition. So it is a way that we are disposed to come together, to commune, and to have conversations. And I think that if we stay true to that vision, that Carrie Festa holds a great deal of promise for charting the way or continuing the way forward. But I think if we want to see it as a government-led or government initiative, this is where we have challenges. So I'll stop there and continue the conversation.
So until February 15th, I would have been on the outside of that whole government story.
Correct.
And then on February 15th, I got a new job, which made me the head of the Department of Culture. So I'm in the middle.
Good luck with that.
Well, so far, so good. I must admit, I've had an amazing minister that, if you know, the Prince Bernhard Culture Funds is a funding agency that funds the arts in the Caribbean and the Dutch islands as well. And she's been a strong, advocate for arts and culture, and she's been fighting many battles in collaboration with many of the different organizations. My foundation, which is the National Institute of Arts, was on the receiving end. We spent, immediately following the hurricane, they came to St. Martin and donated, significant amount of money to help the creative industry to get restarted. So it was wonderful. So, however, the situation I'm facing right now is that in my country, 2018 will be our 8th government in 8 years. So there's a level of, wow, the eyes are huge. Y tengo que hablar mucho más lentamente, right?
Yes.
Perdóname, voy a traducir muy rápido. Es que donde yo vivo en San Martín tenemos un gobernamiento que
Where I live in San Martin, you have a government that in 2018, the government will be the 8th government that we have since 2010. But I have a minister that is in pro and is greatly supporting art.
interim government, because what happened immediately following the hurricane, I have to talk slow. What happened immediately after the hurricane was the government that was sitting was booted out of government.
We do that.
Because
We do that really well.
oh, okay. Because the response to the hurricane and all kind of stuff that went on. So we had an interim government, and right now there's a new group of ministers that are being vetted to take over when, we don't know. So I went to my prime minister, I said, we really need something powerful to take us from this place of nebulousness of what it means to be in recovery. When I look up recovery, it means never being cured, and the addict component, and I'm a recovery, I'm an alcoholic. I said, that's not who we are. We are stronger than that. Resilience wasn't born in 2017, and everybody was scrambling. Okay, our tourism product is compromised. So, okay, what's next? Well, culture tourism. They're like this. So I saw that as a vehicle to say, okay, it would give our artists an opportunity to have front and center, to create a new platform for them to shine. But they're the intellectuals. They've been guiding in the industry so far, but left out of the dialogue. So I thought, okay, maybe me and my naivete, this would be a great product to sell to my prime minister. And she loved it. Yes, bring Carrie Festa. I agree. You got it. And I get here and I hear a whole nother story. So I am not too concerned, because leading up to CariFesta, we don't have a lot of infrastructure in place. We don't have a National Performing Arts Center. We don't have a museum. We don't have this. We don't have arts in the school. You know, everything qua education in the arts doesn't exist. We don't have a secondary education in the arts. We don't have a tertiary education in the arts. Young people who want to pursue arts have to figure it out on their own. They get to Europe and they try to make it work. And this was a way for me to see how I can set up infrastructure, create programs, you know, put culture in the schools. You know, I'm saying, okay, it's a 5-year program. By 2023, if the government comes into place and I have my program organized, we can use this as a vehicle for education. So that's where I'm at. I'm listening to all of the experts who are telling me, and you are my go-to person. You'll become my guru for the next 5 years. And I will listen to your wisdom.
So what I think is emerging from what you're saying is that we have to get a sense of a couple of things. And when I go back to the original vision for CariFesta, I'm thinking that what we were trying to do is to understand, one, the role of art in society, the role of art in development. Two, the role of government in facilitating that development. And three, the ways in which the synergies and harmonization between those two. So the role of the artist, the intellectual in Caribbean development. And in a real sense, we have not answered that question 50 years onwards. Yeah, we haven't answered it. So people have continued to operate in silos. Yeah, so the government does its thing, the artist does their thing, the intellectual does their thing. And so one of the things that we are trying to do is to answer those questions or reopen those questions, given where we are at in Caribbean development. And I think Annie really did a lovely frame in the previous session about the current crisis. Right? So when we're talking about climate change and we're talking about economic development, and of course I come from development, so issues of trade. So for those of us who are not aware, we are currently going to renegotiate a trade agreement with the US. So the Caribbean Basin Initiative is up for negotiation. The bilateral with Canada is up for negotiation. The EU EPA, question mark, Brexit. Right? So for me, this current crisis holds so much opportunity for us to take the reins of our own development and decide what we can do with it. And I think that CariFesta really offers an opportunity to do that. Now, how we play that card is up to us. What we do with that opportunity is up to us. And that has a lot to do with the politics and the people who are called to action, the people who are sitting at the table. Who calls the expert, right? Who has the power to call the people around the table to decide what we are going to do? And these are the very knotty issues of Caribbean development that we have to answer. Yeah, and it's not just in the Anglophone, which is where I come from, it's across the board. And so I think we must seek out opportunities and we must use those opportunities. So one of the things that we are doing with this CariFesta is that we are allowing the artists to determine the direction of the CariFesta. The government is the facilitator. So we have something called Bocas Lit Fest. We say, you do Bocas Lit Fest. We have the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. You do that, right? And so we are taking a very hands-off, right? The symposia, which I am a director of the symposia, the universities are going to do that. So the government sets the frame and the people move. And that's what we do in the Caribbean, right? So we want to get policy in synergy with action, with the way in which the people move. The people, Caribbean people, know what they want, you know, and they know how to do it. The government and the policy is always 10 steps behind. And so what we're trying to do is get policy in step with the people. And if we can use CariFesta as a model for that kind of thing, I think we would have made a little step forward, because trauma is, I'm sorry to tell you, ongoing. It's a project that never stops. Yeah, but we have little wins, and we have to continue to build on those.
And
Welcome to Jamrock.
let me add that when I use the word art heals, it was me being super selfish in trying to get myself situated, because nothing of what I did with my class on September 4th, because we held classes on September 4th, and nothing what I did on September 20th when I opened my studio changed. I recognized the inherent nature of what arts and culture brings. I needed to wrap it in a different package for them to grasp onto something that made sense to them. So exactly all the things that you said is where we live, and is where most of the artists live. And leading up since then, there was never any dialogue about arts and artist culture in St. Martin and the relevancy it plays. So my department has just put into place a research to prove to the government how culture and economic plays in. We've held our first Creative Industries Forum. We're scheduling a Creative Industries Career Fair. So I think I'm living outside, inside, at the same time, trying to really create this platform. So I'm educating. So far, the protagonists have been very welcome in receiving the information, but like I said, it depends on which minister I meet, and that can be as soon as next week or next month. In any case, I recognize, I'm looking at all the models. We mentioned Sing Kids, how they use as a vehicle for empowerment in the community. I just came out of the one in Barbados. You're hosting next year in Antigua. So
in
2021. So I'm aware of that, and I've sat down with Sasha Dietz and all of these wonderful, brilliant minds. So I know I'm at a place where I don't even know how much I don't know.
That's good.
But I know what the arts bring, and I know what culture is, and I've lived in that universe for so long. So I'm hoping that I can be aggressive enough to override and educate and wean and seduce my government into understanding what we can do, because we've been doing it outside of the framework. We've been sending people to study, we've been hosting the festivals, we've been doing that. They have now recognized that their product is challenged, and we're trying to position ourselves. And I'm just trying to navigate my role as someone that was outside, now I'm on the inside, and how you say not to be government-led.
Right.
But that's the journey, so I'm still processing that information.
I think what is emerging from what we're saying in this conversation, again, is this notion of ecology. And ecology, I'm sorry, I have this penchant for looking up the origin of words, right? Sorry. So ecology comes from the Greek, which means oikos. And oikos means household or home. Okay? So when we talk about the conversations that we're having, it again strikes home that we really need to have an interconnectedness, or what we call in policy joined up thinking. Yes? So that we want to be able to bring the artist, the intellectual, and the policy together. We want to be able to bring the social, the cultural, the economic, and the political together. If we don't do that, then we find that we end up in trouble. I also want to caution all of us who understand the power of art to do all kinds of things, to heal, to reveal, to make us proud as a representation of identity and so on. To not be lulled or romanced into this notion that the art is the panacea for everything. Okay? And in the last 20 years, we have seen this growing instrumentalism among governments to use the art as a platform for all the problems we have, all the developmental problems we have. And if you are doing that as an artist or an activist or whatever, you're really setting yourself up for failure. And this is one of the things that Carifesta has to be wary of. The art is powerful, but the art in and of itself will not be the panacea for 500 years of underdevelopment. Can I say that again? Yes. The art in and of itself will not be the panacea for over 500 years of maldevelopment. And so, what we need to establish is the oikos, the ecology in which the art thrives, survives, and works. And so we need the politics, we need the economics, we need the culture, we need all of these things working together in harmony to effect the kind of development we want in the Caribbean. Think about where we are. You know, I tell my students, you know, when I look back at the age of independence, I think that our leaders made the right mistakes. The right mistakes. They were schooled outside of the Caribbean, and they were taught that economic development is going to deliver us. And we say here 50 years later, and we know that is not true. In and of itself, those of us who come from small islands where we grow banana and nutmeg and so on, right? Those of us in Trinidad and in Jamaica and now in Guyana that have oil and natural gas, okay? Those things don't deliver you. So you really want to create a situation where you have these joined up ways, these, harmonizing ways of seeing development. The art has a powerful part to play in that, but it is not the vehicle upon which you hitch a ride to development. And that is how I want us to think about the work that we do.
I agree.
Okay. So 2 words after all of that. No, you should be applauding when she said it. I'm kidding. But Suzanne, I can only say I agree wholeheartedly with you because, like I said, that's where we've been living. You know, I've reached out for my economic department. We've had a conversation. We're trying to see how we can wrap up to collaborate with the economic department as well as the tourism department to see how collectively it's not my journey, it's not my department, considering that my department falls in the Ministry of Education and the entire budget for the Ministry of Education is 127 million guilders, which boils down to, let's say, $60 million. No, 75. And my department has 3 million guilders, which is about, $1.5 million, of which half of that is locked down on permanent subsidies. So I am starting off with a non-existent budget. And so hence my collaboration has already begun with the Department of Economics and the Department of Tourism. And we're already signing up a MOU to work with the French side, Department of Culture. So it's not, because for those that don't know, St. Martin is half French, half Dutch. 21 square miles French, 16 square miles Dutch. And we have a very interesting political structure. So I'm already looking for collaborating partners And you mentioned the various other festivals. So there's the St. Martin Book Fair, there's the SCDF, another. So all of the organizations that have been working, I told them all, and as a matter of fact, we're pulling them all in for a meeting to sign a joint, how you say, this become a joint venture that collaboratively we're gonna create the story of St. Martin that has yet to be written. And so that's the premise from where we're heading off of, you know, and that's where we're at right now.
Right, so again, what you're saying is this notion of I want to go back to ecology and oikos and family. If we think about our own families, the healthier families, because we have plenty unhealthy families, but the healthier families have a conversation going, yes, where we're speaking the same kind of language. We get each other. Right? And so one of the things that we would find as artist practitioners, as policymakers, as activists, is that we too have a responsibility to learn to speak the language of the economists, of the politician, of the cultural people. Very often we stay in our own silos, you know. We want to collaborate, but we don't want to learn to speak their language. It's like being a member of the Caribbean and saying, I'm a pan-Caribbeanist, but you're speaking one language, right? Me guilty. I have working knowledge of Spanish and French. And I keep saying, I need to brush up on my Spanish and French. You cannot say that you're a Caribbean citizen if you speak one language, right? In the same way, you cannot say that you are someone who is collaborating with the other sectors if you're speaking in what I call art speak, right? And for me, I find myself bridging, right? A bit of my background. My first degree is in psychology, right? My second degree is in development. My third degree is in policy, okay? So it forced me to learn interdisciplinarity, right? So learning to speak different kinds of languages. And I think one of the things that as artists in the 21st century, we need to know how to speak to politicians. We need to learn how to speak to economists. We need to know how to we need to understand that you have to be trilingual, you know, or multilingual in that metaphorical sense. So I think for all of us, it is really a business of stretching yourself, getting into territories that you may not be familiar with, and forcing yourself to learn and to grow, yeah? Because what do we have to lose?
On that note, we've reached our time limit. Ladies and gentlemen, muchísimas gracias. Danke schön. Dankjewel. Masha danki. Diabonga. Merci beaucoup. And thank you.